Welcome to Basics of Finite Element Analysis course. This is the MOOC course, part 2. This is the third day of the first week of this course, and in last lecture we reviewed the basic notion as to how the basic philosophy underlying finite element analysis, where a complex problem is analyzed by breaking the domain into smaller elements, and then we find solutions for each specific element. And in the last class we did not do this exercise in context of solving ordinary or partial differential equations, but whatever we learned in the last class or reviewed, we found that the accuracy of this kind of an approach increases if we increase the number of elements, if we increase the nature or order of polynomial functions which are used as interpolation functions, and also once we increase the computational accuracy. So, what we will do in today's module is actually again review what are the different steps when we do finite element analysis. So, most of the time when we talk about finite element analysis, that is in context of solving partial or ordinary differential equations. So, it is when we have to solve these equations, and if we have hard time finding a closed form solution, then we use finite element method to find approximate or numerical solutions for the same equation. And do today is first get an overview as to how we go in this direction on a step by step basis, and then maybe in the next couple of classes we will actually do some examples. So, the first step the steps in finite element analysis are, the first step is that we discretize the domain. Okay. So, we break the overall region in which we want to find the solution of the domain, and we discretize the domain into subdomains, and these subdomains are called elements. Okay. So, this is the first step. Second, and we will learn the details of it maybe later today, is that once we have broken the overall domain into subdomains, then over each element or each domain we assume how unknown variable changes over the element. Okay. So, for example, suppose I have a rod and I am pulling this rod like this, and I am also applying some traction on the rod in some other region, and what I am interested in finding out is the displacement in the rod at all these individual points. So, my unknown is u, which is the displacement in this direction, in the direction of pulling of the rod, and I am interested in finding the displacement at all internal points in the rod. So, the first step is the overall length of this rod is, let us say, L, and I will break this overall domain into smaller sections. So, in this case I have broken it into 4 different elements: element number 1, element number 2, element number 3 and element number 4. So, this is the first thing. Then the second step is that we assume how u varies over each element. We do not know the value of u at each point, but we assume how u varies over each element. So, I can assume that u is constant over element 1, it could be also constant over element 2, it could be constant over element 3, and so on and so forth. Or I can assume that u varies linearly over element 1, 2, 3 and 4, or I can assume that u varies quadratically over individual elements. I can also assume that u varies linearly on element 1 and 2 and it varies quadratically on element 3 and 4, that is also fine. But we assume that over each element how this unknown which is u, it varies. Okay. And when we make that assumption, basically we are assuming that if it is a linear thing, then we assume that u is equal to a plus bx over the length of an element, right, where a and b are unknown. Or if it is a quadratic variation, then we assume that u is equal to a plus bx plus cx square over each element, and a, b, c are again unknown and they may change from one element to other element. So, this is the second thing. The third step is that we find out the error. So, in the differential equation, once we make this assumption, so and we multiply this error by weight function and integrate it over the domain. So, and I will explain that later. First let me just write it. So, we multiply error by weight function and integrate it over element or subdomain. Okay. What does that mean? So, suppose this problem is governed by an equation minus d by dx a x du over dx is equal to q. Suppose that is the problem, or to make it a little more general, I will say plus cu is equal to q. Okay. So, this is the governing differential equation, and if we can solve this equation in context of this particular problem, then we will have the solution. But suppose the solution is not easy, or getting a closed form solution is not easy, then what do? First step is that we broke this entire domain into 4 elements. Second is we assumed that in first element, let us say assumed that first element u is equal to a plus bx. Here also a1 plus b1x. In this case, u is equal to a2 plus b2x, and so on and so forth. Then the third step is we plug this in this equation, and once we plug it, if the solution is really true and exact, the left hand and the right hand side will be same. But because this is an approximate solution, the left hand and the right side will not be same, which means that there will be a difference in the values of left side and right side, and that difference is called error. That difference is called the error. So, that is the error we calculate, and we multiply it by some weight function. So, that error, so mathematically we will say that error, and then we multiply it by weight function, and we will discuss what is a weight function later. So, we multiply that by weight function, and then we multiply and then we integrate it over the domain of the element. So, this let us say this here x1, this is x2. So, I am integrating it over x1 to x2 and this I equated to 0. And the reason why we do it and all that stuff, we have explained it in basics of finite element part 1. So, if you have doubts, I will definitely encourage you to go back and review whatever we talked about in the last class. So, this is the third step, and this step gives us, and we will see that later, it gives us a large number of equations at for each element. Okay. So, we will have this equation for element 1, we will have a different equation of same nature for element 2 and so on and so forth, and for each element we will get several equations. Okay. We will get several equations. So, we get element level equations. So, this third step, it gives us element level equations. Then the fourth step is assemble element level we assemble element level equations. Okay. And then these, so then what we get is assembly level equations. So, we get assembly level equations. Then the next step is that I apply boundary conditions. And we will again do all this through an example. So, we apply boundary conditions. Okay. So, for instance, in this problem, the boundary condition would be that at x is equal to 0, there is a force on the left side, this is one boundary condition, and at x is equal to L, there is a force, tensile force, which is being applied at the, and which is getting exerted in the right side, right, or in the positive x side. So, those are the two boundary conditions. We can apply those boundary conditions, and once we have applied the boundary conditions, then we solve for unknowns in the equation in assembly level equations, and this is how we get the solution. Okay. This is how we get the solution for the overall thing. So, what we will do is, we will again in next 10-15 minutes, we will illustrate this methodology. So, we will go through an example. So, suppose I have a hollow cylinder, and so this is all material, and suppose in this hollow cylinder heat is flowing. How could heat be flowing? Suppose this is a metallic hollow cylinder and I am sending current through this, and it is a long cylinder. So, there is current times I square times the resistance of the cylinder will generate heat at every point in the cylinder. So, heat is getting generated, and what I am doing is, for using some method so this is outside radius, this is outside radius, this is inside radius Ri, and at some other location the general radius is R, which varies, yeah, it is R. So, this is an axisymmetric problem, and what I am also saying is that on the outside radius T at R0 is equal to T naught. So, suppose I am immersing this cylinder in say ice. So, the outside temperature is maintained at 0 degree centigrade, or I am immersing it in boiling water, outside temperature is maintained at 100 degree centigrade. This is one thing. And the inside radius, what I do is I put some thick layer of an insulator, some perfect insulator, which means, so what are the boundary conditions in this case? Boundary conditions that T at RO is equal to T naught and no heat transfer at Ri, at Ri. Now, the governing differential equation for this kind of a system is something like this: minus 1 over R d by dr k r dt over dr is equal to q r. Here K represents the thermal conductivity of the material, T is the temperature at any point in the medium, R represents radius, and because it is axisymmetric problems, for same value of R, temperature will be same, and Q is the amount of heat which is getting generated, right. So, rate of energy gradient in the medium, so that is Q. So, to find R, so our aim, what is the aim? Aim is to find R for different values of R, right, for different values of R between, so this is the entire range of R is starting from Ri to Ro. At different values of R, what is the value of temperature? So, we want to find temperature as a function of R, this is our goal. And we can solve this problem by solving this equation and applying boundary conditions. Now, what we will do is we will generate a finite element formulation for this method. So, this is an axisymmetric problem. So, what I will do is I will look at only a radial line. So, the first step is what we discussed was that we break the entire domain into small elements. So, step 1, discretization of domain. Okay. So, my domain is this Ri, Ro, let us say this is my center, origin. So, the overall length of the domain is Ro minus Ri, and I can break it up into smaller elements. So, this first element is H1 long, second element is H2 long, third element is H3 long, H4 long, and if I want I can break it up into whatever number of elements I want. So, this is the first step. The second step is step 2. Assume interpolation functions or approximation functions for the variable for each element. For each element. So, what is the variable in this, unknown variable in this problem? T, right. So, for each element we assume how T is going to vary. So, we will say that t, it is a function of r, and for the eth element I call it Te. For the eth element I call it T, actually subscript T. So, temperature is varying as a function of r for eth element. So, the value of E will be 1 for first element, it will be 2 for second element, it will be 3 for third element. So, Te is equal to, now I am assuming a function, interpolation function. So, I am saying this is equal to Tj psi j r E, and j is equal to 1 to n. Okay. Now, here psi j E is a known function. It is a known function. An example of this function could be 1, it is a constant, right. So, psi j is a known function. Another example of this function could be a plus bx, it is a known function, but here a and b, they are unknown constants. So, this is a known function and Tj E, these are unknown constants. Okay. So, suppose the overall known function is a plus bx, then in this case it is a sum of two smaller functions. First function is a and the second function is bx, right. In a is unknown, that is same as Tj, and a times 1. So, 1 is the known function which is psi j, right. The second function is bx, there b is unknown, and so that is Tj, that represents Tj, and psi j is x, which is a known function, so that is there. So, in this case it would not be a plus bx, but maybe a plus b r, because the variable is r. Okay. So, I am saying that temperature over element E is a sum of products of Tj's and psi j's. Psi j is a known function, Tj is an unknown constant, and I will have I can sum several of these. So, n is what is the number of interpolation functions. Okay. So, let us call this governing equation as equation A, and let us call this equation as equation B. So, the third step is step 3. Okay. Step 3 is plug B into A. So, we plug this equation B into A, and what will we get? Because this is an approximation of the thing, so we will get an error. Okay. Plug B into A to get error, and then the other part of this step 3 is multiply error, I call it E, by some weight function. Now, how do we choose weight functions? We will see that later, and we have also explained that in FEA 1. So, we multiply it by a weight function, and here we will just pick a weight function as another function psi I, and again it is a function of r, weight function r, and the value of I could vary from 1 to n. So, multiply error by weight function psi I and integrate the product over element and equate it to 0. So, what are we doing? We are what essentially in this step we are doing is we are calculating the error, assigning a weight to the error because we are multiplying it by a weight function and integrating this overall multiple of weight function on error over the domain and equate it to 0. So, in this sense the weighted integral of the error, is 0. So, that is why this is a weighted integral residual approach, okay, weighted residual approach in finite element analysis. So, error is not 0 at every point, but over the entire domain if I integrate the error then it is in a 0 in a weighted sense, The size of the element, essentially as I keep my element size smaller and smaller, essentially when I do this step I go towards a point that error is approaching 0 at every point, because over the entire domain it is becoming 0 and as I shrink the size of the element, that element is increasingly becoming more and more like a point. So, the error is becoming 0 at every point over, but again in an approximate sense. So, when I do this, what is the equation I get? Okay. So, this is what I get, minus 1 by r d by dr kr d minus so this is the error, right, this is the error, and what am I doing? I am multiplying this error. See here what I have done, I have substituted u by Tj psi j, sum of Tj psi j. So, this is the error and I am multiplying this error by a weight function psi I for the eth element, and this is also a function of r, and this entire thing is getting integrated over the, and I am equating it to 0. And what are the limits of integration? So, this equation is for eth element. So, for eth element, the first starting of the eth element is h1e and the ending of the eth element is h2e. These are the coordinates. Okay. So, for the eth element this is there. Now, we said that I is equal to 1 to n, and n is the number of interpolation functions. So, if I have, so just look at this thing here, n is the number of interpolation functions, right. How many unknowns we have in in this function? Psi, all psi's are known or unknown? They are known. Tj's are unknown. How many Tj's are there? N. So, total number of unknowns is n, right, because Tj's are n in number. So, total number of unknowns is n. Now, in this equation I can assume how many values? I is equal to 1 to n. Okay. So, first I multiply the error with psi 1, I get one equation. Then I multiply this error with psi 2 and integrate it, I get second equation. So, total number of equations I will get at element level will be n, right, because I is equal to 1 to n, and total number of Tj's which are unknown are n. So, the total number of Tj's is n and total number of equations which we generate at element level is n. Okay. So, so this is not one equation, this represents n equations, because I equal 1 to n. This is not one equation, this represents n equations because I equals 1 to n. Not because j is going from 1 to n, because j is being summed. So, this term does not change, it is this psi I, it changes as I changes. So, this represents n equations and there are n variables at element level. So, at least at the element level we have the number of equations and number of unknowns is same. Okay. So, this is step 3. So, what we will do is, so we have done these 3 steps, what we will do is next is the way we have explained is that step 4 is we assemble all these equations, and in the step following that is that once we have done the assembly, then we apply the boundary conditions, and once we have applied the boundary condition, then we solve for these unknowns which are Tj's, and that is how we get the solution. So, this completes our lecture for today, and in the next lecture we will develop this discussion even further, and we will also review this whole notion of weak formulation in that context. So, with this we close for today and we will continue this discussion tomorrow. Thank you.